Hi, I'm Ali Patterson. On this episode of Fintech Finance, we're having a look at GDPR and some of the security concerns around this. For this, we speak with FireEye, Nordea, Millennium BCP and Bank Millennium. So firstly, we headed over to Munich to speak with Mike Hart from FireEye to hear about some of the risks from consumers and how they can be made aware of these risks.
The whole challenge in not so much in cybersecurity, but in I call it personal banking. From my perspective at least, the whole challenge really comes from the fact that the most fallible part of the entire equation is the human. So the individual is the easiest thing to target, and cyber criminals are very clever these days. So not only do they just target the individual, but they create an environment around the individual. So they might even do things like if they get access to the customer's date of birth, to their mobile phone number, their home address. That's relatively easy to obtain. Then they contact the bank, let's say a couple of weeks beforehand, and say, oh, I've got a new mobile phone number. Can you please put this in the system? And then when they get targeted specifically around, a spear phishing attack, for example, what then happens is the financial institution can go back and say, can you just validate this? Or they can call them, and of course you're already calling the bad guy because he's changed your phone number.
Of course, when it comes to it, you have to walk a fine line between the customer experience and being secure. What kind of approach do you think banks should really take? I mean, where are the opportunities to still have that frictionless customer experience but still be hyper secure?
Yeah, so I think being hyper secure is very difficult, and back to the earlier point about it's almost inevitable that you're going to be breached. I don't necessarily think all organisations have. There are certainly organisations that have been that don't know. Experience has shown us that the average tenure, if you like, for a cyber criminal inside an organisation is generally somewhere between 60 and 90 days before an organisation even realises that they've been breached. So from the secure environment, if you like, I think it's moving forward to say, how do we mitigate and reduce the potential risk? So if we are breached, then we can find that as quickly as possible and reduce the impact of it. So if you're waiting 90 days until you find something, there's an awful lot of data and generally an awful lot of money that's already disappeared that you had no visibility of. Whereas if you can capture that in the first 24, 48 hours, then the risk is significantly reduced, the exposure for the bank and also for the individual customer.
I sent Douglas McKenzie to Sweden to speak with Ewan McLeod from Nordea Bank to talk a little bit about how they're using big data to really help their consumers.
Cybersecurity is very, very front of mind for us here in Nordea, especially with some of the recent activities we've seen in the marketplace. There's nothing more important to us than our data and our relationship with the customer. And the customer is requiring Nordea to manage our systems, our infrastructure correctly to ensure that we keep both a resilience and reliability and we keep your data secure. So we work really hard. We're using some of the brightest minds in the marketplace, as you may imagine. We have got some really good relationships with various different organizations, Nordic level, European level and beyond, to make sure that we are protecting the customer and doing the absolute best we can. Because it's a key focus and it's perhaps one of the most important elements that we take upon ourselves, is to make sure that we're managing the infrastructure, the technology as best we possibly can to ensure that the consumer is safe, that Nordea is safe and society is safe, because we recognise we play a key role in society.
Douglas also went to Portugal to speak with Millennium BCP to talk about some of the changes with customer interactions.
The big challenge is everywhere, because the customers want everything. They went to the brand, they want everything, they want to be served immediately, they want to be served without cost, they want to be served for even the things they don't want to think about, because they expect that we guess what they want. They expect that we give their expectations. They just want the bank to do everything. One of the things that we saw is, for example, in our country, people still use a lot of cash. For example, these implementations that we have done about this Millennium teller machine is just because we also want to serve better our clients. And this strategy of having these kind of machines that to almost everything 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. This kind of these projects that are very tough because we are implementing this in the same way that we implement these new branches. For example, this is to be more proximal for what the clients expect to have. Is for example, having the cash 24 hours a day. They want to, for example, withdraw a check or making a deposit even at midnight if they expect. And they expect that this kind of teller machines are always available, always doing the things that they need, for example.
We were interested to hear about how big data will affect the industry in the future.
When it comes to data and the exciting things that we're beginning to hear about, I am one of the first to try everything. I love this stuff. I really want to see data, artificial intelligence, machine learning used to help me as a customer. I'd like the systems and processes and all of my data ideally to be available to me to help enrich my life. Now, from a financial standpoint, I would love to be able to press a button, or in fact, you know what, I would really like automatic systems to help me with budgeting. It is a nightmare. Having moved from the UK to Denmark, I don't know how the Nordic systems work, I don't know how the processes work, I don't know how the taxes work. I'm not sure how much things cost. I'm still dividing by 10 when actually it's 7 point something. So from a budgeting standpoint, I find myself using 16 different spreadsheets. I've got a spreadsheet for this, a spreadsheet for that, a spreadsheet, and it is really not helpful. What I would like is someone else to do the work for me. And what I don't mean as a human, I mean systems. To have a look and say, yes, you're overspending, or you're underspending, or you're looking to do some savings. Well, do it this way, do it that way. So I am so excited about what the market can create to give a really, really smart customer experience to individuals, but also to companies, to small companies and big companies. The opportunities with so much data and then so much processing power available to do stuff with that data is really, really exciting. But what else can you tell me? How else can you help me? Could you Nordea, could you recognize that I bought some refills for my pen at Heathrow Airport? But I did that a year and a half ago. And could you, with my permission, go and check, see what brand it was I bought, and see how long that will probably last. And you might want to suggest to me that, is it time for me to buy some new ones? Now, I'm not suggesting that Nordea would be getting into an Amazon-style environment, but what can Nordea do? What can you do with the data that you have? Or what additional data do you need to make really exciting services happen for me?
Over in Poland, Doug caught up with Millennium Bank to hear about some of the opportunities associated with these regulations.
We have, let's say, regulations that are coming into force in 2018, just to mention MiFID II. So, of course, it's being taken care of by the different specialists of the bank, and as MiFID II and IDD, in fact, are the regulations that are under one project. So from delivering the expected results from customer point of view, it's always being more transparent and more customer friendly. From other hand, there is a challenge how to change our activities being compliant, but also being effective. The new requirements are very often quite challenging in terms of adapting new business model in the new circumstances. But that's life. So we are developing every month, every day. So this only makes additional challenge for us. And what is important, these regulations are for everyone, so it simply changes the market, not one, let's say, sort of institutions that are touched and some of them are not. So that's very important, that simply customers will see another reality, but I would say, different ideas, how they are applied by different banks, and they do what they like most, so they can choose them.
How do you think that GDPR in particular is going to affect the industry? What does this really mean from storing data?
Yeah, so I think everybody is aware of GDPR now. There's been an awful lot of education in the market, in the press. We, like many organisations, have endeavoured to keep our customers and our prospects up to speed on what GDPR means for them. I try and summarise it in one simple phrase and say, if you are breached, and we spoke about the inevitability of that, if you are breached, you have a very short window to go public and declare that you've been breached. So how do you find that information quickly, and how are you able to respond? So if you have to go public and you have to declare that you've been breached, then you're able to quantify for your customers and for the market that you have the situation under control, and that the impact has been minimised, and that you've already been engaged in remediation activities. So FireEye is the market leader in what we call incident response. So if something happens, then we have people that will come and help you very quickly ascertain what happened, what was the impact, what was removed, what was stolen, what was I'll call it blatantly robbed from your organisation. And so the education process around that, and understanding how to protect the information, how to protect that data, is becoming more and more important for organisations. I think many of them today, our experience has been lots of organisations obviously are aware of GDPR. They tend to put their heads in the sand a little bit and think, it's coming. We do have controls in place. We'll hope that that's enough. And when it does come into effect, we still have plenty of time. It's not until the middle of next year, 2018. So we have plenty of time to put the controls in place. It's going to be a challenge for many organisations, and I think there'll be a big rush when the first case comes to light where the EU regulation gets enforced against an organisation. I think there'll be then a very large panic from organisations to say, oh, quickly we need to react and make sure that we have a comprehensive strategy. If you are breached, you have 72 hours to respond and to go public and declare that you've actually been breached.
Okay, just pretend so for a second that I'm Tesco Bank. I was breached last year. What would kind of be the sort of process that you guys at FireEye would really do to sort of help Tesco Bank identify what has actually happened?
Yeah, so we would send in, and a lot of this it's generally not in the public domain because customers don't like being overt or being public about what's happened. But generally, what happens is we get contacted. So our incident response team gets contacted by the customer. Say we've had a breach, we'll send some analysts in, and we don't send in an army of people. We'll send in 1, 2, 3 people, something like that. These are the elite, the sort of ninja warriors of analysis, and they'll go in and determine, where did the breach happen, what was the entry point, and what was the impact of it, and then provide that information back to the customer. So at that point, really, it's just about giving the customer the confidence that he now knows what has happened, and to be able to remediate against that, rather than providing the full remediation plan at that point.
What are some of the challenges large organisations such as Nordea face when it comes to internal communications?
We're working hard in Nordea to advance the digital agenda. And that means we have to be talking to our colleagues all across the company, but more importantly, we have to be connecting each other. There are some really, really smart talents all across the business. Everything from blockchain experts straight through to rocket scientists, almost literally. The question there is, we have those pockets of excellence, those really, really smart people, but sometimes they're over here or over there, and we need to know that those guys exist, so that all of us can benefit from that area of expertise. So we're using some smart technologies, smart approaches to ensure that we are connecting with each other on a regular basis. And some of the more standard things you may have heard of. Stop doing meetings for the sake of meetings and so on. So we're working hard and changing the culture to ensure that it's easier to get things done, and that we can respond to the marketplace quicker. Because if you're connecting with each other, if you're talking to each other on a daily basis, then good things can happen swiftly. It's when that communication isn't as easy, that's when it gets difficult.
We were also interested to hear about how staying at the forefront of innovation is vital for cybersecurity.
Poland has become quite an innovative country. We see a lot of attention put to innovation among the companies, but also to startups. Banks, according to different sources, are one of the most innovative branches among all the others. So we decided to join innovation and this startup trend, and we set our own startup within the bank as a separate entity.
So can you tell us the name of your startup?
So we decided to launch our innovative startup by ourselves. The name is Goody, which is an application that is discount aggregator and smart shopping platform dedicated to customers who want to get personalized information of things and services that they can buy via this platform. And this was quite a big challenge because today one of the challenges that we all have in Poland is also the IT people. We are the one of the biggest country in terms of graduating from technical and especially IT universities, but on the other hand we still need some more. So we decided to put a team with the developers run this platform, which was started late 2016, and now it's expanding over the last few months. We see a lot of potential in terms of both customer experience that can join a lot of activities that are daily, not only connected with banking, but also being quite innovative from the bank perspective. And of course, there will be time that the customers see that this is quite close.
It's not all just about detecting breaches. How do you really prevent breaches? I mean, what's your sort of approach from a cyber perspective?
Yeah, so really prevention is the first starting point, if you like, for an organisation. We think that if you can prevent, the vast majority of things happening in the first place, then that gives you the confidence to focus your efforts on the few little things that perhaps will have an impact. So prevention from a cyber perspective simply means, let's shore up your defences accordingly. Let's make sure that that you have simple things like standard patch management, so that you're aware that everything is up to date. That you're not using technology that's outside the confines of your controlled environment and yet has access to all of that information. And I think it even goes steps further in terms of providing the ability to have insight into who has access to your data, for example. Which employees have access? Is it generally available to everybody? Can anybody help themselves? Do you have good visibility into the access and who is accessing the data at any point in time? So it's not just about role control. It's much more about being able to see in real time, for example, who's looking at the data, who's actually accessing the data, and is it people that should be? Is it people that do it as part of their daily job, or is it people that are in different parts of the organisation, and then you look at it and think, why are they accessing this database and pulling these records?
On the next episode of Fintech Finance, we're having a look at AI.